All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Ride Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic, joined by Andrew Ferrelli, our recruiting insider, who works with the South Florida Express, very tapped into the recruiting scene down here, especially when it comes to the Hurricanes. He's a big Miami fan. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing pretty well, Manny. Thanks for having me on again. How are you? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Listen, I know that it's been things have sort of quieted down on the recruiting front since camp started. There's not a lot of recruits, conversations sort of happening, and part of that's because there are not a lot on campus, as you and I were talking about off air. But I guess I'll ask you first, what's kind of been the most interesting you've heard since we last spoke a week ago?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, things have kind of quieted down lately. Right now, they want the coaches is to focus on camp and getting ready for the season, so it's kind of a dead period across the country. There's not really any recruits allowed on campus or anything like that. But we still have seen some recent commitments. I think we just saw William Fowles commit to Louisville. We touched on that last week about how Miami seemed to be kind of passing there. And that's what seemed like happened. So he ended up committing to Louisville, and I think that's a good sign for UM. I think it shows that they're still confident in their ability to go out and get a Hykeem Williams or a Jerry and Dickey. That they feel like they're very much in the conversation for some of those guys still.
Yeah, what's interesting, I attended the high school media day last Saturday that was being put on by Football Hotbed and Brandon Adoy. He invited me to come over, and Andrew Ivins was there from 247. Marcus Benjamin from Rivals. We kind of had our time talking to different guys, and I got a chance to catch up with Hakeem. I just put out an article yesterday on it, and you can check it on at theathletic.com. But Hakeem played for the South Florida Express. That's where I met him was with you guys, and special, obviously a very, very special talent. Big, long receiver, exactly what Miami would want. I got the sense from talking to him for about 20 minutes that the Hurricanes are kind of playing catch up, and I don't know that it's necessarily Miami's fault. I think it's a deal about more about a kid who wants to kind of go away to college. Is the sense that I got, that he's a kid who fell in love with traveling, which is kind of the theme of the story. Is he loves meeting new people, he loves traveling, and he hasn't really done a lot of that in his life until the past year. And I think Pittsburgh, Florida State, and Texas A&M are probably the three leaders in the clubhouse. That's the way I kind of slanted it. Obviously,
Mhm.
Alabama, Georgia, and Miami are in it. They're among his six finalists when he announced it next month, September 23rd, in his school library over there at Fort Lauderdale Stranahan. But do you get the same sense too, Andrew, that this is a kid who, if Miami's going to convince him, they got to do some catching up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of been the theme of that recruitment over the past few months is they seemed like they were, really completely out of it for a while. Especially once the previous wide receivers, Coach McClendon, left to Georgia. It seems like kind of really set Miami back in that recruitment. So they've been playing catch up there for a while. Um, but things can change quickly. I know there's, definitely some people in his corner that like Miami that, would like him to stay home. But they're still trying to catch up there. They've got another, 6, 7 weeks or so to continue to close the gap. And I think they're gonna do everything they can to try to make that happen. But I know Pitt's gonna be tough to beat, especially. He's got a great relationship with Taekwon Underwood. He used to be the receivers coach back at Rutgers. Even got Hakeem to come visit at Rutgers when he was there. So they've got a bond that's gone back quite a bit. He's close with Hakeem's mother and everything like that, who's playing a big role in that recruitment. So Miami's definitely a little bit behind right now. But I think just the sense that I'm getting is they're going to do whatever it takes to try to close that gap over the next 6 weeks and definitely make him think about staying home when that decision time comes in late September.
Yeah, I think Hakeem, he told me his mom would love for him to stay home because she works in the courthouse
Mhm.
over there in Fort Lauderdale, would prefer not to have to travel far to go watch him play. But at the same time, too, I think she's also giving him his blessing to make the best decision for himself. And so he's sort of operating from that way. I would say Florida State, surprisingly to me, has a good shot as well. And I know you mentioned it, I think last podcast, his relationship obviously with Omar Graham, who signed with Florida State out of Tallahassee, but I also think he's got a good relationship with Ron Dugans. He said, behind Taekwon Underwood, that's probably the second best relationship he has with the position coach. And all of that matters to him. I think, we all understand NIL is going to play a factor in this as well. But, if everybody's, doing what they have to do to take care of him and his family, right, when he gets to college, then I think, it could just ultimately come down to relationships, and that's a hard thing to kind of overcome.
Mhm.
When Josh Gaddis really hasn't had as long a relationship with him as some of these other guys. So Miami's going to push hard. I know they want that elite receiver, as you mentioned, but I don't know. It seems like they're playing big time catch up. And then William Fowles, you mentioned him before picking Louisville. Miami obviously, I think liked him in some capacity, but certainly not enough to make him a priority. And maybe that's a situation where if they don't get a Hykeem Williams, or they can't flip a Brandon Inniss or somebody of that ilk, one of those elite receivers, do you think there's a chance they still go back and try to and maybe pry him away from Louisville?
Yeah, I think there's a chance that they circle back. I think the fact that they, kind of didn't make him a priority at the moment, shows, just that they're confident they can go out and get someone, and if not, that they can circle back and flip him later on if needed. And just to touch on Hakeem, again, with the relationships, Miami's a little bit behind there, but I think one of the big things that they're pushing is just their quarterback room. Obviously, as a wide receiver, that's important. Um, there's not many teams in the country that have a quarterback room that's set up for success over the next 3, 4, 5 years, like Miami is with, obviously Tyler Van Dyke will be gone by the time he gets here, but you still have Jake Garcia, who's looked really good behind him, Ja'Cory Brown, who's very talented behind him, and then obviously Jaden Rashada, that would be in the same class with Hykeem. And there's not many schools that can offer that kind of stability going forward at that quarterback position to a receiver, and especially not some of the other schools in his recruitment, especially schools like Florida State. They don't have a quarterback committed in this class. Obviously, that's been a shaky position now for them for a couple years. So I think that's one of the things that Miami's really trying to show them is, you're going to be set at quarterback if you come here. So I think he kind of wants to see what Gaddis's offense looks like. I think a lot of these coaches are, at other schools are trying to tell not just him, but just receivers in general that are looking at Miami. Oh, Gaddis is just going to run the ball. You're not going to get the ball there and everything like that. So I think some of these receivers want to wait and see what exactly this offense looks like under Gaddis. But I think having the quarterback room set up like it is going to be a big plus for some of these guys that they're still going after.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I will say from talking to Hakeem that he loved the city of Pittsburgh. Like I asked
Mhm.
him, I said, "Where'd you have the most fun?" He said Pittsburgh, and I was kind of blown away. It's like you don't think about Pittsburgh maybe being a fun city, but as far as just his personal experience of traveling and so forth, the one thing he did say too was he wants to wait and see kind of how the season starts for every one of his teams.
Mhm.
So he's giving this a little bit of time. There is time to catch up. Um, well, that's kind of the latest on the receiver front. We mentioned in the last podcast, receiver, defensive line, safety. Those are kind of the three primary areas going forward with Miami 17 commits. I think the class is ranked ninth again in the
Mhm.
247 sports composite, obviously just because teams keep adding, teams in the top 10 keep adding. So they slip from 7 back to 9, but still a very, very solid and elite class in my mind. Jayden Bonsu is a guy we've talked about a ton on here. He's finally going to make his announcement, I guess, soon. And it doesn't look like it's going Miami's way. It looks like he's going to Ohio State. We mentioned that in the last podcast. But I want to ask you about a couple of other defensive backs. Dijon Johnson obviously is a big one, top 100 cornerback in the country, um, top 100 recruit regardless of position, but top cornerback in the country. He hasn't committed to Florida, and we kind of were saying last podcast, the longer that thing goes, the better it is for Miami. What's the latest you're hearing with Dijon? Is there a chance that they get him down here once camp ends and they can start hosting recruits?
So for a while, obviously, it looked like Florida was the leader that weekend once he left and didn't commit there, kind of opened things back up. There was a period of time last week, and I think still now, where the vibe is kind of he might end up just back at Ohio State.
Wow.
They seem to be back in the picture. He's talking to them a lot more again, but I think he's right now. I think he's truly undecided. I think there's definitely a couple ways that it can go. And I think Miami's just hoping that he holds off on his decision and decides to take an official visit down here once the season starts. And I think that, like I said last time, they feel confident that if he holds off and they do get him on campus for an official, that they can seal the deal there. So I think again, the longer this thing drags on, which he seems pretty undecided right now. So if this does drag on into the season, Miami can get him down here for a visit for a game. I think that'll put them in a good position. But he seems pretty open right now. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being UF. If he ends up just going back to Ohio State, or if it does end up being Miami, I think he's pretty open to all three at the moment. So I think a lot of it's just going to come down to how the season starts and who can get him down for an official visit once once the games start up again.
I'm gonna ask you just little updates on two SFE guys, Cormani McLean and Damari Brown. Two other possible options for Miami. I know we've said all along Miami's kind of running second on Cormani, but anything changing with that relationship? Any chance at all that maybe they could surprise Alabama? And if not, how are things kind of looking with Damari?
So with Cormani, I think obviously Alabama's still the leader in the clubhouse there. Um, a lot of it's going to come down to how the season goes, but I think Alabama's got a decent lead there. I know he's really close with Coach T. Rob, who used to be here at Miami. Was actually the one that started recruiting him to Miami, so he's had a relationship with him for a while, and now is recruiting him to Alabama. So I think Alabama's definitely in the lead there. I know he's very close with Tony Mitchell, who's currently committed to Alabama. So that's another thing pulling him there. If Tony Mitchell were to look elsewhere, maybe that opens things up a little bit more with Cormani. But I think right now Alabama's definitely the leader there. And then with Damari, I still think Miami's in a good position there. He hasn't once he visited Alabama and Clemson and didn't commit to either. I think that pretty much made Miami feel really good there. His dad obviously played for UM. He's got a lot of UM ties. He's been on campus a ton. He was out there for Paradise Camp. He was just all decked out in UM gear. I see him, anytime I see him at UM or here and there, he's always in UM shirts, UM shorts, whatever the case may be. So I think he's just kind of waiting on making his decision, not rushing into anything. But I think they feel they're in a really good spot there with him.
Miami's got another defensive back who's supposed to be, he's scheduled to take an OV to Miami. Kid out of Georgia, Bryce Thornton, out of Alpharetta, Georgia, Milton High School. 5'10", 185-pound, 3-star safety. Obviously, there's some, top tier safeties here in Miami's backyard. Some of them that played obviously for SFE. Curious what you think happens now that Bonsu, it looks like he's going to Ohio State.
Yes, I think we touched on it a little bit at the end of the last episode. They'll probably look at some local guys. A Damon Fagan who's committed to NC State, a Conrad Hussey, guys like that at King Mac at St. Thomas as well. And then it seems like if they do look out of state, Bryce Thornton seems to be their new target that they're kind of after. He's a top 500 play overall. He's just outside that the 4-star range. He's a 3-star in the 247 composite. But he's got some big offers, especially for his, for being a 3-star. He's got offers from Alabama, Florida, Miami, Clemson. He's got close to 30 offers. And he is planning at least to come down for an official visit, September 23rd, followed by visits to Florida and Alabama in October. So we'll see what happens there if they can get him, to follow through with that visit on the 23rd. And if they can either get him to shut things down there and not take those visits to Florida and Bama after, or if he goes through those visits at Florida and Bama and doesn't commit, I think we'll get a better idea of where Miami is after those 3 visits in September and October. But that seems to be kind of the guy they're shifting towards now after missing out on some recent safety targets.
Yeah. Defensive line obviously still a position to lead. You got Jayden Wayne, the top 100 defensive end edge rusher, part of the class, but there's other guys that they are involved with. And Damon Wilson, I guess this week, was mentioning Miami being in his top 5. Kid out of another edge rusher out of Venice, and then Samuel Mpemba out of Bradenton IMG Academy, another big target. Tell me kind of what's going on with those two guys and what you've heard.
So I think they feel pretty good about both of them there. They've got some really good relationships with both of them. And Pemba, his recruitment, it seemed like he was very, very pro Miami. Then there were some people that got in his ear for a little bit, and it seemed like things were going Georgia's way. Not sure exactly what happened there, but apparently there was some relationships that got kind of pulled apart there. And those people aren't necessarily as close with him anymore. And it seems now that Miami could be back in the driver's seat in that recruitment. Obviously, he came down for the barbecue recently, and just seems to be very pro Miami recently. Things seem to be swinging back in their way. I know he plans to get down here again once the season starts. And then Damon Wilson as well is another kid that they're definitely trending in the right direction with. He's been a really fast riser. I think he's all the way up, but On3 has him as the number 3 overall player in the country on their rankings. So he's another kid that they feel pretty good about. And I think I'm not sure if they end up getting both, but I think just based on how they feel about either of them, I think they feel pretty comfortably about at least landing one of them. And if you can pair one of them with a Jayden Wayne, that's an elite edge class to pull 2 5-star top 50 players at that position.
Yeah, and I caught up with Rueben Bain at this media day event over the weekend out of Miami Central. He's also a top 100 recruit in the country, 4-star, obviously had 29 sacks last year at Central for that state championship program. And the sense I got from Ruben, obviously his brother is on the staff at Miami, and his former high school coach Roland Smith is there. That's not going to preclude him, from going to Miami. I spoke to his high school coach, Jude Joseph, and I asked him that question. I said, "Is there anything in terms of NCAA rules that are going to preclude him from going to Miami?" He said, "Absolutely not."
Hmm.
So I think without question, Ruben is very much interested in Miami and coming to Miami. But I think at the same time too, it's not a slam dunk, and part of that is because Alabama's really, I think, done a really good job recruiting him. Obviously, Auburn is another program that he's visited and has a relationship with because of some of the coaches that are there that have some ties to Ruben. But I think and Oklahoma is a place that he liked a lot too. But I think when it comes to him, it looks more of like a Miami Alabama battle. I spoke to Charles Fishbein this week to kind of get his opinion on Hykeem Williams and Rueben Bain. And the thing he told me about Ruben is, he considers him just like the other kid out of St. Thomas who's at Alabama right now, tearing things up behind Will Anderson.
Dallas Turner.
Dallas Turner, and he says that's who he reminds him of, and a lot, and I said, well, people say, maybe Ruben gets to the point where he's too big and they got to move him inside, and he disagrees. He just thinks, the kid has some great moves, and can stay out on the edge, is fast and athletic enough to stay out there. I guess
That's
what are your thoughts on Ruben?
I mean, I think that's kind of my concern with him. Just obviously he's a great prospect. I mean, the stats speak for themselves. His production is elite. Um, but he's kind of in between. He's I think listed at like 6'2", 250. So he's not really your long, fast edge rusher that seems to be, that prototypical 6'5", 6'6" lengthy guy that can get around the corner. And at the same time, I don't think he necessarily has the frame if he were to move inside to get up to 290, 300 pounds. Um, so he's kind of in between. Not a knock on him. It's just it'd be weird. It'd be interesting to see how he would be used. I think that's part of what he's looking for in a school is to see how they want to use him. Um, because like I said, he's kind of in between at that 6'2", 250 range. Um, so I think one of the things he's mainly looking for is just talking to the defensive staffs and seeing what their plan is for him at the next level. So obviously Miami's, right there in the thick of things with him. Like you said, they've got his brother on staff. They've got his recent high school coach, Roland Smith, on staff. Um, Obviously, they've got tons of ties and connections with Miami Central recently and just over the years. So I think they're very, much in the middle of things there. It seems like you said, them and Alabama seem to be the two front runners. I think a lot of it's just going to come down to which system he thinks he fits in, given his skill set. So we'll see. I guess he'll talk to Miami's defensive staff, Alabama's defensive staff, and anyone else that is in there for him. And it's just going to come down to I think where he feels most comfortable on the field and how he's being used out there.
Yeah. Andrew, appreciate you catching up with me, man. I know things are going to slow down a little bit on the recruiting front, so maybe we take a break for a little while until there's some more stuff that happens. But I appreciate you coming in and being our resident recruiting insider. You always provide good content and conversation.
Anytime, yeah, it was great speaking with you, and yeah, it should be a fun season, especially once the games get going again. If Miami does well, Hopefully, it seems like things are going that way, and if they wins 9, 10 games this year, get some kids on campus for official visits, it could keep the ball rolling with this class.
Yep, agreed. All right, brother. Talk.
Have a good one.